Thank you. Okay, great to be here. So my name is Elram Goren. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of CommonSense Robotics. And at CommonSense Robotics, what we're basically doing is building what we call micro-fulfillment centers. These are in-city, highly robotic fulfillment operations that retailers can deploy within cities. Now, that combination between automation and in-city deployment allows retailers to offer sub-1 hour deliveries and dramatically reduce their operational costs. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Before we start, I want to start with saying thank you to the folks at Wired for having us today. This is actually the second time that we're presenting here at Wired Retail. The first time was 2 years ago. Back then, CommonSense was a very small company, was 4 people, still bootstrapped with no funding. But we had that amazing opportunity to come here, and we actually went to present at the startup stage. And we didn't have much. We did have a vision. And we came with that vision and presented that, and we were fortunate enough to have that resonate. And I'm happy to share that today, 2 years later, so CommonSense is about more than 50 people. This is an old photograph of the team. We're backed by 2 amazing investors. One is Eric Schmidt's Innovation Endeavors. The other one is Aleph, one of the early investors in a small startup you've probably heard of called WeWork. We've assembled this amazing team. Part of it is built from people from Apple and from Microsoft that's building the robotics and the AI, and then another part from people from companies like Tesco and from Instacart who are leading our operations. And they've been working night and day in the past 2 years to build this. So this concept that was merely a concept 2 years ago is today a reality, and I'm very happy to share with you that we've just signed the first live commercial agreement to deploy one of these facilities in central Tel Aviv. So that's going to be live in the first half of 2018. And that's everything I'm going to talk about the company called CommonSense Robotics. That's it. What I want to focus on is the approach that we're taking here, and that is called micro-fulfillment. And what I'd like to focus on is how we use robots and this new concept in on-demand logistics called micro-fulfillment to enable profitable on-demand retail. And we're specifically focused on segments like groceries, like health and beauty, like fashion. These are segments that are characterized by extremely intense and complex operations. These tend to be quite costly, and this is what we're focusing on. And to start, I'd like to start with defining what we're trying to do here. So what we're basically trying to do are 3 things at the same time. One is to enable those retailers to offer on-demand experience. That means sub-1 hour delivery. So from the moment that you hit the order button to the minute that order is at your doorstep, that's less than 1 hour. 2, we want to enable that type of operation without having the retailer to increase the price, right? So we're talking about the same price that a customer would find in a store. And the third thing is to have better economics. A, profitable economics, and B, better or more profitable than what they're doing today. Now, if you take any one of these metrics, you can find companies that can do these metrics. But if you take the combination of all 3 of those in segments like groceries or health and beauty, that's practically impossible today. And this is what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about why this is not accomplished today. So if you're a retailer today and you want to offer on-demand deliveries, you basically have 3 options how to do that. One is to use your existing stores and to do manual picking from these stores. This is obviously easy to start with, but is is extremely expensive as you scale. The second option would be to consolidate this type of operation and to build massive facilities where you still do manual operation, but you consolidate this type of operation. This is, because of its sheer size, these facilities have to be located very far from populated areas and thus cannot really support on-demand deliveries. And the third option is to go and to build massive automated facilities that are quite expensive. They're more effective or more efficient, but again, they have to be massive. And that just doesn't allow you to do fast deliveries. And when you look at how this combination of fulfillment, location, and delivery looks like, you end up with something that looks like this. So you can choose. You can do manual fulfillment or automated fulfillment. You can do local deliveries or centralized deliveries. And the three combinations that you see in red are the combinations that retailers have. That's their choices today. And what micro-fulfillment is all about is that green option, and that is the combination of local deliveries and automated fulfillment. And that's a new combination. That's something that is, the logic of it is quite counter to everything that we know in logistics, right? Because the first thing that you learn is that to be more efficient, you need to consolidate. That creates economies of scale. And that is true, but it's not true when you need to do faster and faster deliveries. And this is where technology comes in. Okay? So you need technology that will allow you to bring these operations in cities, in small facilities, in these parking lots that one of the speakers were talking about earlier, and to deploy in these types of facilities highly automated operations, highly complex operations that involve fresh items and chilled items, right, and frozen items. And this is what we're doing, okay? And we're optimizing on three main things. One is speed. So we're doing end-to-end fulfillment of, let's say, a large grocery order of 50 items in less than 10 minutes. That means that from the minute that you hit that order button to the minute that order is being loaded to a truck, less than 10 minutes. For an average Instacart order, that would mean less than 5 minutes. This also means that once you decrease the size of these facilities, you can literally deploy these in underground parking lots. And we're going to show an example of that later on. That means that you can shorten delivery routes by a factor of 10. So instead of deploying a facility 20 miles away from town, we're talking about 1 to 2 miles away from your customers. The second thing is economics. So where we have 4 times the labor efficiencies as compared to a manual operation, and we're doing 4 times the sales to footprint ratio. That has significant effect on the economics of the retail business. And the third thing is scale. So instead of having long, very intense projects that take years to deploy, we're talking about deployments of about 2 months per facility. And that is extremely important once you talk about a scalable business that needs to be deployed very fast. And okay, all these are really nice numbers. Let's look at a real example. This is a case study that we've done with several UK groceries here in the UK. And what I'd like to show you is how these costs are transformed before and after using this type of technology. So what you're seeing here is basically the costs today using manual operations and how these are reduced as you move to more advanced and more advanced technologies. In fact, today, this is something that not a lot of people know, but in groceries, almost all retailers that sell online groceries are basically losing money on that business because of the combination of very low margins to begin with and very costly operations on the other hand. So today, the gross margins are actually lower than the operational costs of online groceries. What we're able to do, including, you can see this including our costs, we're able to lower these costs to a point where these, the margins are moving from a losing business to a profitable business. Now, the first step here is quite crucial for any business, right? You certainly want a profitable business. The second step here is actually more interesting. And that step involves making these operations that efficient that online groceries is actually even more profitable than the offline business. Now, what happens, let's say in the US, what happens to a $600 billion industry like groceries in the US that has today about 2 to 3% online penetration once grocers have more incentive to do online than offline? What happens when consumers are now getting a service or an experience where ordering online is actually faster than going to the supermarket and coming back, and it's actually cheaper than doing that? So these types of technologies transform the way these industries will behave as we see it, and this is what we're trying to do. Now, let's try to look at how the entire dynamics of this market look, because this was one example. So, and in that example, you could have seen that there are two very main costs that are associated with these types of operations. One is fulfillment. So fulfillment has to do with everything that has to do with storing the items, managing inventory, picking, packing, and loading of these orders. And fulfillment, if we look at it as a function of, and forgive me for being a bit technical, but as a function of how close you are to your end customer, obviously behaves in a way where as you go closer and closer to your customers, fulfillment costs are higher, right? Because real estate costs are higher, because your utilization of your resources is less efficient. So that's one thing. The second thing has to do with delivery costs. Now, delivery costs are behaving the opposite, right? As you go closer and closer to your end customers, delivery costs are lower. So the combination of these two creates a point of equilibrium where most retailers are operating today. In groceries today, even that is not profitable today, and this is where they are today. Now let's look at how micro-fulfillment changes that dynamic. So when micro-fulfillment kicks in with these types of technologies of robotics and AI, we're able to do two things. One is to lower costs of fulfillment. Two is to enable these types of operations, these automated operations, in smaller scales, much smaller scales. If you're going to take today the smallest automated facilities today in groceries, let's say ones that Tesco or Asda are building, we're talking about 4,000 to 5,000 orders a day. These are the minimum numbers. I know it doesn't say a lot, but take that as a fact. We're talking about facilities that are 10 times smaller and more efficient than these types of facilities. This means that you can start a lot more local and a lot smaller and then grow from that point. And what that means is that when you take the total cost of doing an order, of fulfilling and delivering an order, it has two effects. One, the costs are lower, but they're also lower and closer. And what that means is that you can do it faster and you can do it cheaper. This is basically where we're at. Now, this has an effect not just on fulfillment, it also has effects on deliveries and on distribution. Because when you think about it, now let's imagine a network of these facilities that several retailers can use the same type of infrastructure. So now, if a gentleman here orders something from retailer A and another lady orders another thing from retailer B, we can combine these orders for the same delivery truck and then optimize on deliveries. The same can be done on distribution. So we're seeing a lot of other opportunities in these types of networks, but this is certainly a different architecture than what we're seeing today in terms of last mile logistics. In that sense, we usually say that the first thing that you need to do in order to solve the last mile problem is to make it a last mile problem, right? Today, the last mile problem usually isn't really a last mile problem. And this is what we're doing here. Okay, so I want to finish with some things that we're doing in reality. What I'm showing you right now is a picture of CommonSense Robotics offices. This is in central Tel Aviv. You can see the reflection of Tel Aviv. We're sitting at the 7th floor, as you can see. But I'm not showing you this to show you that we have a nice office. We do, but that's not the point. The point is to show you what happens 8 floors below that. And what happens there, this is the underground parking lot of our office building. This is in central Tel Aviv. Right now, this is a picture taken about 4 to 5 months ago. Right now, this is inhabited by dozens and hundreds of robots working together, doing fulfillment. We're paying 20% of the retail lease. We're doing 4 times the sales to footprint. We're using 1/4 of the labor, and we're doing that at the center of town. And this is exactly the type of facilities that we're building, and these are going to be live in early 2018. That's it. Thank you.